My name's Nick Rennie. I'm the Associate Director of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies. And my only function here is to introduce our speaker, Ardeth Thawnghmung. She is on the Political Sciences faculty at University of Massachusetts at Lowell. She holds a PhD from that institution. She's taught in such diverse places as British Columbia and Australia, in addition to America, and has written a bunch of really interesting things just from the titles. Beyond the Teak Curtain, The Karen Revolution, Beyond Armed Resistance. She's going to talk to us about the social and political implications of daily life of ordinary people. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, for the introduction. Thank you again for allowing me to come here and to share with you my current research project in Burma. I'm very honored and excited to be here. My research looks at strategies by ordinary citizens in Myanmar, Burma, and their varied and collective impacts on environment, collective welfare, state capacity, and democratic practices. So in terms of methodology, the research was carried out in the summer of 2008, 2009, 2010, and the whole year in 2011. And so I thought that I completed my research. Basically, I look at how ordinary people use different strategies to cope with their lives. But as most of you are aware of, currently, the Burmese government has introduced a series of political economic reforms. So I have decided to go back this summer to look at how these political and economic reforms have an impact on coping strategies of the ordinary people in Burma. I use, basically my research is qualitative method-based. I use in-depth interviews, survey, focus group discussion, non-participating observation, and secondary resources, meaning analysis of Burmese language, local newspapers, and journals. And I was able to interview about 200 people from all walks of lives. And my focus is mainly on individuals who make $100 US dollars per month. I was also able to interview policymakers, academics, community leaders, and humanitarian workers and staffs. My unit of analysis is individuals, households, and village. So before I talk about the coping strategies in Burma, I want to give you a very brief background of the country. Burma is in Southeast Asia, and it's currently grouped under the category of low human development. And it ranks 149 out of 187 countries in the UN Human Development Index. Per capita income is $1,535 US dollars. This is UN Human Development Index. But for some data, it's lower than that. And according to the United Nations Development Program in Burma, 26% of the Burmese populations are still living in poverty. That means that they are earning $1 per day. Burma has been ruled by the military government since 1962. And since 2010, however, we have a newly elected government. They are composed predominantly of ex-military officers and members of pro-military government party. However, to many surprise, the current government has begun embarking on a series of political economic reforms. And a few examples of these include the release of political prisoners, including the main opposition political leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, who successfully competed in the midterm elections and is now elected member of parliament in the lower parliament. And the government also negotiated ceasefire agreements with many ethnic armed resistant organizations. It also tried to eliminate monopolies, privileges given to previous cronies and military officers, privatization of state enterprises, relaxation of control over media, legalization of rights to workers' union and strike, and provision of incentive and monitoring mechanism to reduce corruption. Geographically, Burma is divided into 3 distinct areas: the coastal area in the southeast and the southwest, the dry zone in central Burma, and mountainous area in northeast and northwest. And the country is very diverse in terms of the populations. The majority of the people are Burma or Burman, and they constitute 65% of the populations, and the rest of them are those who speak minority dialects, and there are about over 100 dialects spoken in Burma. So coping strategies developed by ordinary citizens in Burma vary depending on where they are, depending on the environment, the location, depending on gender, ethnicity. However, and when I did my research, I tried to go to different places to find out how these strategies differ in terms of the regional variations. And I found 2 common coping strategies across different areas. In terms of definition, I define coping strategy as widespread and adapted responses by ordinary citizens to manage, utilize, or overcome natural, policy, and institutional constraints and opportunities. Coping strategies are carried out for survivor as well as for profit accumulations, and it's very difficult sometimes to differentiate what's survivor and what's profit accumulation. However, the main motivation here is to improve current situation. So in my research, I do not consider alcoholism and suicide as coping strategy. Coping strategies can be both legal or illegal. They can be new practices as well as reformulations of old practices. So the first coping common strategies I found among these poorer segments of population is frugal living. People live frugally in order to make efficient use of their space and labor. So I want to give you an example of housing. It's not uncommon for 3 generations of one family or families of 2, 3 siblings along with distant relatives and friends to be living under the same roof where they share the chores, responsibilities, and income. The picture on the left side is a picture of a middle-income family, which is not really the target, the demography of my focus. However, I want to show you even middle-income family try to squeeze into as many people as they can in the household to deal with these economic challenges. And this middle income also, they have 17 members in their family living in 2 bedrooms apartment. The other picture is two brothers who earn a living making India bread on the street. And they told me that there are 15 members in their family living in the house, which is about 21 square feet wide. Cutting down on the quantity and quality of food is also very common. There has been very well-established market for products targeting low-income populations. They're very cheap. They look really, bright and palatable, but they're very cheap. But they're most likely to be expired, low quality, and safe and regulated products. And even if they are of high quality, they are most likely to be divided up into smaller packages to make them affordable to the poor. Parents reduce expense for the kids' education. So kids will be taken out of school, sent out to work as domestic workers, factory workers, waiters in the cities. So if you're the oldest child in your family from very poor household of village, chances are that you will barely finish third or fourth grade and you'll be sent out to the city to be employed. And this is supported by the UN Human Development Index, which shows that the average schooling years completed by average Burmese citizen is 4 years. There will be limited resources to spend on basic healthcare as well. The majority of people who cannot afford to see the doctor usually consult with salesperson at any drugstore, and most of them are unlicensed, or at a convenience store which sells snacks and Western and traditional medicine for various kinds of illness. Conservation is another coping strategy. People use and reuse, recycle their household goods until they can no longer be used. And this is a picture of a guy who earned a living by collecting used materials in different neighborhoods and sell those for higher profits. The second most common strategies that I have found in the country is extra income generating activities. And these include backyard garden, livestock breeding, home-based activities, and extra services provided provided by self-employed as well as civil servants. So people grow seasonal vegetables and engage in small-scale livestock breeding. And naturally, this option is available only in villages and in suburbs where some open space is available. Switching to better alternative crops is another strategy. Many farmers try better, more profitable crops. And one highly profitable but not legal crop is poppy, or opium. And the latest report by the UN Office on Drug and Crime show that the acres devoted to opium production has increased, especially in the mountainous, the cooler areas over the past 5 years. And the study found that the growth in opium cultivation is said to be correlated with deterioration of food security in almost all the regions. Many stay-home moms set up home-based income-generating activities. They set up grocery shops, sewing or hair salon, weaving. And here, home-based shops have many advantages. They allow individual flexibilities, as owners can open their shop at their own convenience, and they can engage in multitasking by taking care of children and doing household chores. Others provide extra service at the same job site where they have been employed or work 2 or 3 jobs. A 16-year-old waiter told me that he earns extra income from the restaurant whenever he was able to hook up the customers with girls who sing at karaoke. Sometimes he said he asks more money when the customers are drunk. Another waiter said that he collected used bottles from the shop and sold them back for recycling. A lady who works during daytime as massager, transform herself into prostitute at night. Fish sellers, usually young single female, sleep with their wholesalers to get low interest credit. Poorly paid civil servants and government employees also attempt to supplement their income by charging fees for the services that are supposed to be provided free of charge, such as when processing national identity or passport applications, issuing building permits, granting vehicle license and inspection certificates, so on. Teachers provide additional tutoring to students. Most of these jobs most of these income-generating activities are not uncommon in many third world countries. But some of the activities, some of the jobs that people created in order to earn extra money can be beyond the imagination of a person who grew up in industrialized Western societies. I can give you one example here. The Burmese people consider white elephant to be bringing good omen, prosperity to the country. So whenever the Burmese government capture white elephants, they put it in a different locations for the public display. And when I visited the place, I noticed that the white elephant, the tail hair of the white elephants are all missing. And so I asked the staff, what happened to the tail, hair of the white elephants? And they said, all the staff plucked them and sold them in the market. This is how they earn the extra money. What they did is they make them into rings, suckle them and weave them into ring and sold them. And people who wear them keep these as a good charm for themselves. So this is how they make money. And so he was thinking that I was looking for the tail hair of the elephant. So he said that even though we don't have this right now, we have elephant waist. Would you like to have elephant waist, a white elephant waist? And so I said, what do I do with white elephant waist? And he said, take the white elephant waist to your home and dig a hole in your front, the front of your home and the back of the home, and bury these ways, and you will be protected from all the evils. So, so this is how employees, staff at the elephant zoo earn a living. Selling off the poverty, pawning their possessions is also a common way, and borrowing, usually among the poor people, is a very common way, coping strategies. And most of them, especially the poor people, and this is also happened in almost all the third world countries, they have to borrow with a high interest rate because they don't have collaterals. And my research found that many of the collateral that they use is usually household items, blankets, mosquito nets, and pots and pans. A few, I have come across some people who are able to do a safe, and these through rotating credit association, through the patron and through the bank. However, most of these people are those who have regular incomes, such as daily wages. Rent seekings. Rent-seeking, I consider rent-seeking activities as those do not provide, produce any new goods or products. And the rent-seeking activities are the result of two main circumstances. The first type of rent-seeking emerged either because of the official over-regulations, which forces citizens to and consumers to pay off state employees to reduce excessive bureaucracies. And I can give you one example here. at the Yangon University. And this is just a small example. We can think of so many examples. But at the Yangon University, until very recently, when you if you want to enter the campus, you have to wear the traditional clothing. You will be turned away if you are not wearing traditional clothing. So if you wear pants and skirts, you couldn't get into the campus. And what the employees, the gatekeepers at the university campus did is that they have extra traditional clothing for rent. So if you go there and you're not wearing appropriate dress, then these people start renting you the traditional dress for 300 kyats. So that's a example of one type of rent seeking sought by civil servants, government employees. The other types of rent seeking emerge from individuals' attempts to take advantage of the gap between official and market prices on certain goods and services. This is partly due to scarcity of goods, which is also due partly to official restrictions on imports and the government's attempt to impose artificially low price on these scarce goods. So individuals try to have access to these scarce goods and with the try to have it with the artificially imposed low prices and sell it in the black market or in the market with the higher prices. And these activities was widespread during the socialist period in 1970s, 1980s. But we still have these activity, especially in markets where the government tried to regulate heavily. Example include petroleum market, car market until 2011, government airlines and train tickets, and even access to free service provided by non-government organizations. So there are some brokers at the free clinics who will be lining up to get the coupon for free medical treatment, and they will try to get these coupon and sell it back to the patients with a price. So these are this is another forms of rent-seeking activities that this is a petrol market that ordinary people try to use in order to make ends meet. Intensification of resource extraction. Resources have increasingly become scarce due to growth in populations, extraction in timbers and mineral resources by heavy machineries and commercial activities. And under these circumstances, we see that citizens use desperate and sustainable method to exploit the resources. And examples include fishing with chemical and explosive device to catch fishes, especially in prohibited seasons, cutting down trees to procure a bunch of orchids or medicinal plants, and burning of the whole forest in order to catch wild animal, over application of fertilizer and preservatives in food to processed food. And the picture I have here is in northern Chin State, and this place used to be barren and infertile. And beginning in the past 7 and 8 years, they were able to they were able to introduce intensive agricultural method in the area, and have seen abundant crops and vegetables that can be sold in the market. But one of the things they did is they overused the chemical and fertilizers. And when I was there, the lady who served me these potatoes, very delicious potatoes and cabbage, said, we use chemicals so much that even flies, when they rested on our tomatoes, die 5 seconds after they rested on our tomatoes. And I was eating the tomato that she served to me. But luckily, I'm still alive. So deceptive strategies. Deception ranges from some of those non-intruding strategies that do not have serious negative consequences on immediate environment, to white lies, short selling, diluting products, impersonation, to outright stealing, human trafficking, robbery, swindling. So I'm focusing more on the first three of them, which is more widespread, whereas stealing, human trafficking, those are happen. Those are the strategies, but that are used by a minority segments of the population. It's not really the widespread strategies used by the poor populations in the country. To give you example of some white lies that doesn't really have negative consequences on the environment. Kids were taught at a young age to say any kinds of white lies to survive in highly competitive markets. When I was visiting the pagoda in Yangon, there were so many kids trying to approach me to sell fish feed because the pagoda has have fish breeding ground, so that there were kids who were trying to sell fish, and there were about 20 and 30 of them asking me to buy fish feed from them. And I want to buy fish feed from them, but there are so many of them. I don't know from whom I should buy the fish feed. So there was a little girl. She looked like she's about 11 years old, and she screamed at me. She said, "I have seen you before." And I said, "Really? You've seen me before?" "Yeah, you are. I know you. You're a Korean movie actress in the movie." So I bought the fish feed from her. Housewives complain of meat and fish sellers short selling their products. So in Burma, usually if you go to bazaar, if you go to the market, the products that you bought usually and always weigh less than what you are told. So the housewives always complain about meat and fish sellers short selling. Here are some of the pictures of the fish sellers short selling their products in the market. Milk and other products have been diluted with water. That's very common. And mixed with some ingredients, good quality rice mixed with broken and low quality rice. So this is a daily occurrence that all the housewife has to face. Other use a little strategies, again, similar to the strategies that do not really have a serious negative impact on the environment. For instance, a beggar who begged for money during the weekday. I was able to interview one beggar, and he told me that during the weekday he would beg on the street, in the main street at the University Avenue, and he would be wearing a necklace with a pendant with a Buddha statue. But in the weekend, he would beg by the church, and he would change his pendant into a cross. So this is the latest strategies that he used. And there were so many people trying to impersonate themselves as nuns and monks, begging on the streets. And in 2011, it became a widespread concern among the populations. And the government, one of the local newspaper reported that the government arrested 5,000 individuals who impersonate themselves as nuns and monks and beg for food and money on the streets. Others deal in piecemeal. A goldsmith would take a small piece of gold from customers who would like to repair or size their jewelry. Dockyard workers or a truck conductor boy would steal a handful amount of rice from each of the rice bags they carry or transport. Astrology. Burmese people commonly rely on fortune tellers, astrologers, and religious figures to consult on a number of issues, from naming their children to buying illegal lotteries to operating businesses to finding suitable partners. And the idea here is that to help them deal with the current problems and challenges, and also to help prepare them for unfortunate, misfortunate events. So usually these experts would give the people advice and advise them to take particular actions in order to overcome, to successfully deal with the problems. And this in Burmese, it's called Yedayachi. That means that the astrologers or religious figures would advise you to carry out certain activities to help deal with the problems. And people go through lengthy and cumbersome procedures to carry out the actions suggested by astrologists or by these experts. For instance, a friend of mine told me that he was supposed to leave the country on a certain date, but he has to postpone it for another month because his astrologist told him that this is not appropriate day for him to leave. So I conducted, this is an astrologist working at a pagoda. So I conducted an representative sample survey to find out how many people practice, consult with astrologists. And this is only in Yangon, just to give some ideas. Among 81 respondents, equally divided between male and female. 76% of the population is Buddhist, 22% Christians, and 3% Muslim. And according to this, I found out the majority of them, both men and women, consult with astrologists at least once a year. And some of them did not really exactly follow through the suggestions provided by the experts. And most find the consultation helps solve some of their problems to some extent and temporarily. And even when they found out that the consultation, the suggestion did not really help them solve their problems, they do not blame it on the experts. They blame it on their bad luck or the incompatibility between themselves and the experts. So I see these fortune tellers, monks, and professionals serving the role almost as psychiatrists in a country that has only a handful of professionals who deal with mental and emotional stress. Because if you look at the amount that costs them to get the service, it's very cheap. It ranges from 500 kyats to 10,000. So 500 kyats is less than $1. So it's cheap, and people really frequently rely on this. I can also tell you one example. A businessman, how widespread is the practice, the reliance on astrology. A businessman told me that when his wife found out that her business partner ran away with the money, it's about $10,000. It's a lot of money. The first thing she did not go to police or to the lawyer. She went to the astrologist first, and she consulted. And he told me that if you approach lawyers and police, in the end, you're going to spend more money, and you will never be able to recover your money. But if you approach the astrologist, you spend only about 5,000 kyats, and which is about $5-6, and eventually this calmed them down. Eventually, so for them, the first person that they would approach is the astrologist. Religion. Studies show that religion tend to play a major role in insecure and impoverished societies that do not have established state welfare system. And Burma is not the exception in this case. And religion play a big role in this. And there are various ways in which religion or religious institutions help people cope with their daily activities. I want to show you what the majority of the Burmese populations are Buddhists, and the rest of them are Christian, Muslim, Hindus. And I want to show you examples of Chin State, northern Chin State, which is the majority of populations are Christians. And Chin State is considered the poorest state in the country, and it's in the most remotest part of the country. And you can see that people are extremely religious. Every household that you go, at the front door of their house, they will have their name as well as their religious denomination. So this guy is Pak Nai Ka. And above his name is said that Jesus Suboi Asi, which means in Chin language, it means that Jesus is the Lord. And this is usually associated with Baptists. So if you're Baptist, you put that kind of sign along with your religious denomination. And if you're Catholic, you have the cross in front of your house there. And if you go to streets and houses and clinics, they are all named in Christian names, such as Grace, Emmanuel. You have so many Emmanuel clinics or Emmanuel store, Eva, and the Life of Water. These are newly established churches. It's always crowded, and this is one of the newly established churches led by Koreans. And you can see that because they're crowded, they have to have additional TV sets for different rooms. There has been increasing popularity among these newly established churches, many of which are attractive to poor segment of the populations due to their emphasis on emotional outlet through praying, personal testimony, singing and dancing, and also due to charismatic preachers who make emotional appeals through the message on salvation that targets the poor people or that deal with current socioeconomic situations. And due to their relatively relaxed rules and regulations about marriage or sexual practices. And usually these churches has better communications with grassroots populations. So there are three ways in which religion has been used as coping mechanism. First, religious teachings boost morale amidst adverse economic situations. People meditate, pray, visit pagodas or churches to perform marriage or join Mongkok religious obligations, as well as a way to deal with emotional economic stresses. Second, it is used as a practical instrument to cope with one political and economic problems. For instance, some enter Mongkok a few days just to take a break from secular world to deal with personal and professional stresses, to overcome alcoholism, to avoid military conscriptions, and to run away from crimes. And this is to give you an example, this is during the until 2 years ago when Myanmar was under the military government, and the government occasionally cracked down on people who sell DVD, which contain information released by the opposition exile groups or who engage in foreign exchange market. These were considered illegal by the government. So whenever the government was about to crack down on these activities, most of them entered the Mongkok. They became monks as a strategy. And usually for this type of petty crimes, the government leave it alone. If people are, enter the Mongkok, then they don't really take actions against them. They leave them alone. So a week later, they come back and continue their businesses. Thirdly, religious institutions also provide shelter, assistance, and safety net. Traditionally, Buddhist monastic education plays a role in promoting Burmese literacy and providing shelter and food in times of emergency crisis, and have increasingly carried out social work in monastic education, orphanage, healthcare, and humanitarian assistance. And the same thing can be said of Christian institutions. And finally, religion and religious institutions serve as a means to acquire individual power and economic interests. And there have been quite a few scandals where religious authorities are accused of using donation money and grants given by foreign donors to accumulate their personal wealth and to enhance their power and exercise control over the followers. Gambling is done by gambling is very popular in the country and is done practiced by individuals regardless of their social and economic status. However, there seems to be a higher level of addiction among the poorer segment of the populations, especially on illegal gambling, illegal lottery. There are two types of illegal lottery in Burma, and they both are based in Thailand. One is done twice a month, and this is based on Thai official lottery, and the other is done every day, and this is based on Thai stock market. So the one that is based on Thai stock market comes out 4 or 5 times a day. And you will see that poor people are very addicted to these to buying this illegal lottery because the price is cheap, and they're hoping that they might be able to earn some of the additional income. But in the end, usually I haven't heard anybody who become rich because of especially poor people who buy these illegal lottery. I have not heard any of them becoming rich, but usually there is a big destruction in terms of the household finance, and in terms there were so many divorces and suicide because of the negative consequences, mainly because of the debt accumulated from engaging in illegal lottery. And I got this one from one of the wholesalers, so I don't know whether this is accurate or not, but I would not be surprised because this is the wholesaler who sold the illegal lotteries. And you can see that people who make about this much ended up spending the same amount of or more of their salary on illegal lottery. So this, even though the buying of illegal lottery has been used as one of the coping mechanisms to deal with economic stresses, in the end, it's ended up causing more trouble in the society. So I'm going to try to wrap this up. Exit migration is another coping strategies. They migrate internally, externally. Sometimes it's the individual within the household migrate. Other times, the whole family would migrate. Some of them are temporary. Others are seasonal and permanent. And most of the people who migrate usually, and those who go to the city, usually are employed in the factories, construction service, and some will go to mining and plantation. Political ways of coping. This is how individuals use strategies to deal with local authorities. And usually on many occasions, people basically try to put up with the local government officials and try to accommodate their needs. And I can give you example, especially until recently when before this newly government came to power. For instance, many residents in the country would join a pro-government party as a way to avoid punishment or harassment or to extract benefit. So up to 2010 elections, membership in government parties are very useful. because membership of government parties and organizations carry certain privileges. A karaoke lady became member of government party to avoid harassment by police. People who watch soccer at tea shop at night and made loud noises would also join the government party as a way to preempt police arrests. Muslims or people from remote areas who do not possess citizenship card also join the pro-government party or pro-government organization, since this membership card can be as good as a citizenship card when they travel on the plane or on bus, on a train, and when they apply for government. Sometimes they have to bribe and negotiate with authorities. Oftentimes they use deceptive strategies. But on very rare occasion, people would approach a variety of sources such as media or local authorities, religious leaders, or local government officials to complain and to engage in protest. And this form of strategy has become more widespread as the political environment has opened. And last but not least, social network is also one of the coping strategies in the country. So this social network is either through family, friends, through the patron, through the community, and through local, national, and international organizations. So to summarize it, I want to say that these coping strategies are not exhaustive. Some of the categories are overlap. For instance, extra income generating and rent-seeking activities, they overlap. And individuals may employ a variety of strategies simultaneously. And another thing to take note is that some of the strategies are specific to particular income group and gender. For instance, home-based extra income generating activities are usually carried out by women, mother. And finally, they are not uniquely Myanmar, because similar coping strategies are also found in other poor and even rich countries. And again, these strategies are not also static. They are going to be reformulated and readjusted based on the new political and economic environments. So at the end, I put all these different strategies and I look at their short-term, long-term implications here. I want to summarize it this way. The first point to make is that some of these strategies, particularly productive and service-oriented strategies, promote self-governance as individuals take initiatives in dealing with the problems and limitations they face in making their way in life. Some of these activities, particularly everyday forms of resistance that defy official policies, could also lead to political and economic reform, either through open and organized resistance or through increased coverage by local media, which have recently been allowed to a greater say to issues that are not considered a threat by the central government. However, a desperate attempt to save resources, cut down on spending, particularly on nutrition, health, education, could undermine the productivity of the family, household, as well as the whole nation's economy. Other desperate attempts to survive also put strain on the environment. Some coping strategies that deal with economic stresses create more harms than solve individual problems. Addition to illegal lottery has become a widespread social phenomenon in the country. People become mired in debt, frequently pawn, sell their possessions because of it. Migration may solve family stresses, but it could also lead to physical abuse, breakup of families. Other activities that lead to corruptions and bribery may also mine state capacities. There has been a number of local international NGOs which attempt to address social and humanitarian problems. However, many of them has done little to foster accountability, transparency, and they promote hierarchical culture and exclusive practices. So I would like to end my talk like this. Coping strategies adopted by poor people are many and diverse. They have both negative and positive consequences. They have short-term and long-term implications. So any policy that attempts to deal with poverty issue should take into consideration the roots and implications of these coping strategies to develop a more comprehensive and realistic approach that are sensitive to the needs of the populations. And thank you.